So right now, I work volunteer with the Climate Reality Project. It's an international organization, but we have a local chapter here in Gainesville, and so I'm the chair of that chapter right now. We have a leadership team of 6 people, and some of the things that we do is that we work on some local advocacy issues. So we'll collaborate with the city of Gainesville, the county, and our local representatives to advocate for climate action solutions. And some of the other things that we do is we run campaigns. Sometimes those are led by national and sometimes we lead those. And so what that might look like is right now we're doing a Green Schools campaign that we want to start up, where we are trying to find high school students and people that are really interested, that are youth, in actually electrifying their schools. So that's a campaign that we're currently working on starting up that I'm really excited about. And yeah, so some of the impacts that I want it to have in our communities is obviously to help advance and move forward climate solutions here in Gainesville, to work with people to have meaningful engagement between our communities and local governments is something that I'm really passionate about. And yeah, and to just connect people, educate them, and help them understand more about the climate crisis.
So we're curious, what draw you to want to get involved in climate change?
Yeah, so my parents have always really instilled a love for the environment in me. My dad was born in Cuba and he moved when he was 10 years old. And so he would always really talk about how he loved being in nature when he was young and just living close to the beach and, you know, with a lot of less development that there was there. And he always talks about Miami over the years being overdeveloped. I know, you know, some of us are from South Florida. And so that just really always instilled kind of a conservation perspective in me. They also really loved traveling, and so we would go to national parks a lot growing up, and because of that I was able to, you know, do junior ranger programs for young kids and really always loved the environment. So when it came to high school and, you know, they ask you, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? I knew that I wanted to do something to either help the environment or help people. My parents, you know, didn't necessarily think that was a real job, and so they said, well, you can either be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or in business. So I went online and I was like, okay, well, I like reading and writing, so I guess a lawyer. And then I found out that there was environmental law and environmental policy as a career, and so I became hooked on that, and I said I want to do that. So when I got into college, I already knew that I wanted to do environmental law, environmental policy, and that just kind of drove me here. Did political science and economics as a major, minoring in sustainability, and, you know, worked internships related to environmental policy with Environmental Protection Agency, nonprofit, and obviously volunteering here in the local community. So that kind of just drove it from there.
If you had to describe your work with a metaphor, how would you do it?
Okay. I don't know exactly how I would word this metaphor, but I think I see myself in the climate movement a lot like a bridge. I think we talked a little bit about partisan divides or just divides between people and government. And I really want to work on being a bridge to kind of bring people together. So I really value connection. I really value spaces where we can bring people together to discuss things. So I think that's kind of guided a lot of the things that I do in the community. Even like with Climate Reality Project is an organization that was mainly tailored towards an older population. And I came in as the youngest person there, and, you know, I really wanted to bridge some of that intergenerational gaps with people that were advocating for climate. So trying to bring youth together with some older populations that can bring a lot of wisdom and experience to the movement. So that's something that I've tried to bridge. I think trying to bridge between people and government is something that I really want to bridge, because when I grew up, I didn't feel like I had a lot of access to government. I didn't really know, like, who were my local representatives, like how did government work? And so coming into college and being able to find that out, I think I really want to just connect people in an informal way with people that do work in government that can make decisions for them. So yeah, I think a bridge in that standpoint, and again with some of the being bipartisan, I think also bridging some of those divides is something that I really like to do in my work.
So how do you approach those people who are skeptical of climate change?
Yeah, I think for me, honestly, bipartisanship and meeting people where they are is something that's really important to me. I think that, you know, it's very hard to have climate change as the top of your priority if you're worried about, your bills that you have to pay, if you're worried about, your home, buying a home, and a lot of other things that come into people's lives. And so it makes sense that for a lot of people, climate isn't the priority. But I really try to just engage with people and show how some of these issues, and sometimes I won't even use terms like climate change if I think it's going to alienate people. Sometimes, I'll start off talking just about environmental effects that are related to climate. Does this affect whether you can go fishing? Does this affect whether you can go hunting? Does this affect the food that you eat? And so I really try to meet people where they are, and I try to show how climate is going to impact their lives and things that they value. And that's kind of how I've always addressed situations with people that might be skeptical of climate change. And I really try to build a connection with someone first so that they trust me as a source, and that they believe what I have to say, and that I'm not doing it in a way to attack them. So that's always kind of been the way that I've addressed some of those climate conversations that are difficult to manage.
A lot of your work, like you said, is very local areas, is communities that you're a part of, be it South Florida or here in Alachua County. How has that tangible messaging that you were talking about, how has that changed over time, and has it been an effective strategy to kind of meet people where they are, if you will?
I think for sure. I think it's hard because obviously these issues can be divisive, and I think a lot of the times the term of environmentalist or someone that cares, about climate is really portrayed only with one sort of political orientation. So people that might not necessarily see themselves in that way think that, well, they can't be a climate activist, they can't be an environmentalist. But I think really meeting people where they are and seeing the things that they care about, because I think everybody connects to nature in one way or another. It could be food, it could be weather, it can be spending time outdoors and recreation. So I think bringing back that attention to what people care about, how they interact with the environment, has been really effective, and it's really worked for even some of the local advocacy that I've done here in the community. So with Climate Reality Project, I have had a time where I was able to go and meet with our representative, Kat Kamick, and she's a Republican, and we went to her office and asked her to co-sponsor a bill that basically gives technical assistance to farmers who are trying to implement some conservation practices and some of those grants being passed down by the federal government. And she ended up co-signing the bill and helping us and moving that forward, because she really cares about agriculture. She really cares about helping farmers. And so at that point, this was a climate friendly solution, but it wasn't a climate bill. It was a bill about helping regular people, helping a community that she really cared about. And so I think that was just a really effective messaging strategy, is just to talk about a particular issue that I knew that we could find common ground in.
Okay, so you're obviously very involved, very well-rounded. So as we talk about all of these events, looking back, is there one specific achievement that you are most proud of?
Okay, let me think. Give myself a second to think. Most proud of achievement. I can't think of an achievement per se, but I think just really being able to join Climate Reality Project, and even just, the leaders themselves asking me to step up as chair has been a really big achievement for me. I think everybody, as young college students and coming from South Florida here into Gainesville, we're all newcomers here in Alachua County, and so it's been really nice to form almost a home and a community of people here that are like-minded, that are working on the same things as me, and that really trust me to lead them. And especially since I was the youngest person coming into that organization, I think it really meant a lot for me that this group of people trusted me to make some decisions for them and help move their organization forward. So I think that was just the biggest achievement. I feel like I started to find a place of belonging here in Gainesville, and it really helped me connect with the community here. So definitely that would be the biggest thing that I think that I've achieved personally.
Okay, and so as there are these many organizations, what would you suggest, or what piece of advice would you give to a student that might perhaps be a little shy or a bit hesitant to join these organizations, or perhaps to someone who might feel overwhelmed by the amount of organizations that there are on campus?
Yeah, I think it's really overwhelming sometimes, and especially when you first come into UF and it's such a big school and there's so much to do. I think One piece of advice is don't be afraid to get involved. You will find community, and people are so kind here and so welcoming. But if you are hesitant, I think bringing in friends is always a great thing. Again, I'm a person that really loves to pursue things with people that I care about and pursue things with friends. And so bringing a friend to the first organization you want to get involved with, at least to kind of break the ice. And then even if that friend ends up not staying a part of that organization, I still think that's a great way to kind of ease the tension of getting involved. So
another one of those creative questions. I think a lot of times when people think about climate change and climate solutions, and we talked a little bit about like the policy side of things, right? What is kind of an idea in your head or something that you've thought about that is a climate solution that's not as policy oriented, something that, you know, is a little bit more tangible for just everyday people?
Okay, I mean, there's a few. There's things that individuals can definitely do to reduce their climate impact, and that might be something as simple as reducing the amount of red meat they eat. And that doesn't always mean, I mean, a vegan diet and a plant-based diet is great for the environment, but even just switching out beef or turkey, chicken instead of red meat, I think is something that has a really big environmental impact that a lot of people don't talk about enough. But also just being cognizant of the energy that you use, being cognizant of how much you consume, especially for young people like me that we're always on TikTok, Instagram, and there's a lot of advertising out there. I think being aware of how much we consume is something that our generation definitely needs to think about. And so finding ways like secondhand shopping, or even just shopping on special occasions and not falling, you know, victim to some of the trends that go around that we all want. I think those are really big things to think about. And I think just thinking long term when you make big decisions in your life, your career, what type of house you're gonna get, where you're gonna live. I think just thinking about long-term impacts of your decisions is always a way to just have a climate resilient mindset involved, even if it doesn't necessarily revolve around the environment per se.
Okay, so obviously there are a range of environmental issues that we've covered today. Is there one specific issue that you are deeply concerned about or that you deeply care for?
Yeah, I mean, I think that climate adaptation is a big thing that I really care about, and climate resilience, just because I really do care about how communities bear the impacts of climate change. And I think extreme heat is a big thing that I've always wanted to kind of work on because I live in Florida, and so it's so present here. And I think especially as Floridians, we overestimate our ability to handle the heat. I know that I love warm weather, everybody around me loves warm weather, so we're built for heat, it's no problem. But I do think that extreme heat is something that's gonna be a really prevalent issue. And I've been in a heat wave once in Oregon when the PNW had a big rise of heat waves, or like a heat wave in that time, and it was really unbearable even for a Floridian. So yeah, I think that's something that I'm really passionate about addressing right now, and for especially vulnerable populations like the elderly, people that work outside a lot, children. I think people underestimate how big of an issue extreme heat would be.
Well, looking long term, what's your hope for the future?
My hope for the future in terms of like climate, or
in terms of climate, in terms of, you know, all of the work that you are working on, that other people are working on, you know, let's say 5-10 years down the line, like what point are you hoping we're reaching?
Yeah, well, I definitely have hope. I think back sometimes, and it's really hard when, you know, there's a lot of division around climate issues, and there's a lot of people that are very skeptical about it. But I think about some of, you know, the major challenges that humanity has faced for many years before my time. I mean, we've gone through epidemics, disease, pandemics, a lot of social issues that we've been able to work on. And so I do think that when disaster hits, humanity has a way of, you know, moving things forward. So I do have hope, and what I would like to see is more connection on these issues. So I think instead of debating about whether climate change exists, I think we should be debating on the ways to move forward with it. So I think that's a major thing that I would like to see, is engaging people regardless of political beliefs, regardless of background, on this issue so that people can disagree on the solution and not the problem. So that's something that I would definitely like to see in come 5-10 years. And just all sectors really being involved and hands-on on thinking about sustainability. So how our investments can lead to a more sustainable future with banking, with venture capital, how our governments can be more sustainable, how engineering, urban planning can be more sustainable. So I think just seeing that integration so that it moves beyond just the environmentalists and moves into all sectors of society is what I would like to see going forward.
Okay.
I mean, you almost answered my next question. My next question was going to be, what's your call to action just to everyday people, who, for example, may not know or may be concerned about climate change, and to the people that kind of feel hopeless about it and don't necessarily see that, bright future ahead?
Yeah, I think the first thing is talk about environmental issues, and not just about climate change and not just about the things that we might disagree on, but just talk about love for nature, the things that we see happening in our local communities. If you see a park being torn down, if you see environmental degradation, and just talk to people about it. I think the more that people realize that these things are affecting them, the more that they're going to start to care. So, and there is statistics about how 72% of people, don't quote me, but around 70% of people think climate change is an issue, and only around 35-37% of them actually talk about it. So I think talking about environmental issues is a big deal, and just knowing that there are resources to write letters, call your representatives, get involved, and really joining organizations is a great way to do that if you're too intimidated at first or you want a community of people to support you. So research environmental organizations in your area and see who really cares about these issues and where you can get involved, even if it's a super small action or a really big one.
Well, thank you so much for
you.
the chance to sit down, ask you some questions. I really did appreciate, most importantly, your perspective on how we can take such a big scale issue and make it more approachable for people on the local level. And I really do think that as a part of that Let's Talk Climate initiative, it's going to be very exciting for people to see. So thank you so much.